Welcome! Today we're going to talk about some of the unsung heroes of your body, your kidneys. We'll dive into what they do, and maybe more importantly, how you can spot some of the early signs when they might be feeling a bit of strain. All right, let's kick things off with a pretty mind-blowing number. Get this. Inside each of your kidneys, you've got about 1.5 million tiny microscopic filters, and they are working around the clock, 24/7, just to keep you healthy. So, what do all these little filters actually do? Well, you can think of them as your body's own master filtration system, a really advanced one. And their job? It's absolutely essential for keeping you alive and well. But here's what's so cool about them. They're not just like a simple filter you'd find in your car. Your kidneys are smart. They don't just take out the trash. They also make these incredibly complex decisions about what to keep. You know, all the good stuff like vital nutrients and proteins that your body needs to thrive. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit and get a closer look at how this delicate process actually works. These tiny little filters have a name, of course. They're called nephrons, and their main job is to perform this constant, super important balancing act for your whole body.
And this really shows you what that balancing act looks like. On one hand, they're constantly pulling out things like toxins and waste products. But on the other hand, they're working just as hard to make sure all the valuable stuff, like proteins and essential nutrients, gets put right back into your system where it belongs.
But what happens if this amazing filtration system starts to get a little strained? You know, when it's not working quite as well as it should? Well, it's kind of a double whammy. First, the bad stuff, the waste products, can start to build up in your body. And second, the good stuff that your body desperately needs, like proteins, can actually start to leak out instead of being kept. This kind of imbalance can show up as different physical signs. But here's the tricky part. They often creep up on you really slowly, so it can be easy to miss them at first. So let's go over a few of the common signals your body might be sending you if its filtration system is feeling the pressure. One of the first things people might notice is swelling, which is also known as edema. You might see it in your legs or ankles. There's a specific kind called pitting edema. That's where if you press your finger on the swollen spot, it actually leaves a little dent for a moment. Another big one is a change in your blood pressure. So you might be wondering, what's the link between your kidneys and your blood pressure? A good way to think about it is like a garden hose. If the flow is restricted or the hose gets narrower, the pressure inside goes way up. It's a similar idea with your blood vessels. And that higher pressure, it can put even more stress back on those tiny filters in the kidneys. And that brings us to something really important, our everyday lifestyle. Let's talk about some of the factors that often come up in conversations about kidney health and the kind of strain our bodies can be under.
To give you some perspective, think about this for a second. At any one time, your entire bloodstream only has about 1 single teaspoon of sugar in it. That's all it needs to function normally.
But when you look at how many of us eat today, well, it's a different story. It's not uncommon for people to take in 15 teaspoons or even more every single day. That's a huge difference. Now, that kind of excess can really put a strain on the system. Your body has to work extra hard to manage it all. Over time, that constant workload is thought to be tough on the delicate lining of blood vessels, and that includes all those tiny, important vessels inside the kidneys.
So, keeping that in mind, what can we do?
Let's explore some eating patterns that are often linked with supporting your body's overall health. A big theme you'll often hear is focusing on nutrient-dense foods. What does that mean? It just means filling your plate with real, whole foods that give you lots of vitamins and minerals, without making your body work harder than it has to. Some key ideas usually include things like getting more leafy greens, eating a moderate amount of good quality protein, and cutting back on all the refined and super processed stuff. Really, the main idea is pretty simple. When you eat fresh, whole foods, you're giving your body the fuel it needs to do its job well, without adding any extra, unnecessary burdens. Okay, and this right here is the most important point of our whole conversation. Everything we've talked about today is really just for your information, to help you be more aware. It is absolutely not a replacement for medical advice. If you need a diagnosis or testing or treatment, you must talk to a qualified healthcare professional. The whole point of this was just to give you a better understanding of how your body works. So we'll leave you with this one question to think about. With this new awareness, what's one small, simple choice you could make today to help support your